Hello, fourth grade. We are ready for another day of reading because of Winn-Dixie. Today we are going to be reading several chapters. We're going to do 17, 18, 19, and 20 so that we can finish our book this week. So I will go ahead and get started. Chapter 17. Well, Litmus came home from the war, said Miss Franny as she went on with her story, and found himself alone. And he sat down on what used to be the front step of his house, and he cried and cried. He cried just like a baby. He missed his mama, and he missed his daddy, and he missed his sisters, and he missed the boy he used to be. When he finally finished crying, he had the strangest sensation. He felt like he wanted something sweet. He wanted a piece of candy. He hadn't had a piece of candy in years. And it was right then that he made a decision. Yes, ma'am, Litmus W. Block figured the world was a sorry affair and that it had enough ugly things in it. And what he was going to do was concentrate on putting something sweet in it. He got up and started walking. He walked all the way to Florida, and the whole time he was walking, he was planning. Planning what? I asked. Why, planning the candy factory. Did he build it? I asked. Of course he did. It's still standing out on Fairville Road. That old building, said Amanda. That big spooky one? It is not spooky, said Miss Franny. It was the birthplace of the family fortune. It was there that my great-grandfather manufactured the Litmus lozenge, a candy that was famous the world over. I've never heard of it, said Amanda. Me neither, I said. Well, said Miss Franny, they aren't made anymore. The world, it seems, lost its appetite for Litmus lozenges, but I still happen to have a few. She opened the top drawer of her desk. It was full of candy. She opened the drawer below that. It was full of candy, too. Miss Franny Block's whole desk was full of candy. Would you care for a Litmus lozenge? She asked Amanda and me. Yes, please, said Amanda. Sure, I said. Can Winn-Dixie have one too? I have never known a dog that cared for hard candy, said Miss Franny, but he is welcome to try one. Miss Franny gave Amanda one Litmus lozenge and me two. I unwrapped one and held it out to Winn-Dixie. He sat up and sniffed it and wagged his tail and took the candy from between my fingers, real gentle. He tried to chew on it, and when that didn't work, he just swallowed the whole thing in one big gulp. Then he wagged his tail at me and lay back down. I ate my Litmus lozenge slow. It tasted good. It tasted like root beer and strawberry and something else I didn't have a name for, something that made me feel kind of sad. I looked over at Amanda. She was sucking on her candy and thinking hard. Do you like it? Miss Franny asked me. Yes, ma'am, I told her. What about you, Amanda? Do you like the Litmus lozenge? Yes, ma'am, she said, but it makes me think of things I feel sad about. I wondered what in the world Amanda Wilkinson had to feel sad about. She wasn't new to town. She had a mommy and a daddy. I had seen her with them in church. There's a secret ingredient in there, Miss Franny said. I know it, I told her. I can taste it. What is it? Sorrow, Miss Franny said. Not everybody can taste it. Children especially seem to have a hard time knowing it's there. I taste it, I said. Me too, said Amanda. Well then, Miss Franny said, you've probably both had your share of sadness. I had to move away from Watley and leave all my friends, I said. That is one sadness I have had. And Dunlap and Stevie Dewberry are always picking on me. That's another sadness. And the biggest one, my biggest sadness, is that my mama left me when I was still small. I can hardly remember her. I keep hoping I'll get to meet her and tell her some stories. It makes me miss Carson, said Amanda. She sounded like she was going to cry. I have to go. And she got up and almost ran out of the Herman W. Block Memorial Library. Who's Carson? I asked Miss Franny. She shook her head. Sorrow, she said. It is a sorrow-filled world. But how do you put that in a piece of candy? I asked her. How do you get that taste in there? That's the secret, she said. That's why Litmus made a fortune. He manufactured a piece of candy that tasted sweet and sad at the same time. Can I have a piece to take to my friend Gloria Dump, and another one to take to Otis down at Gertrude's Pets, and one for the preacher, and one for Sweetie Pie too? You may have as many as you want, said Miss Franny. So I stuffed my pockets full of Litmus lozenges, and I thanked Miss Franny for her story, and I checked out with Gone with the Wind, which was a very big book. And I told Winn-Dixie to get up, and the two of us left and went over to Gloria Dump's. I rode right past the Dewberry's house. Dunlap and Stevie were playing football in the front yard, and I was just getting ready to stick my tongue out at them. But then I thought about what Miss Franny said, and I thought about what Gloria Dump said, and so I just waved instead. They stood and stared at me, but when I was almost all the way past, I saw Dunlap put his hand in the air and wave back. "Hey," he hollered. "Hey, Opal." I waved harder, and I thought about Amanda Wilkinson and how it was neat that she liked a good story the same as I did. And I wondered again, who was Carson? Chapter 18. When we got to Gloria Dump's, I told her I had 2 surprises for her and asked which one did she want first, the small one or the big one. "The small one," said Gloria. I handed her the Litmus lozenge, and she moved it around in her hands, feeling it. "Candy?" she said. "Yes, ma'am," I told her. "It's called a Litmus lozenge." "Oh, Lord, yes, I remember these candies. My daddy used to eat them." She unwrapped the Litmus lozenge and put it in her mouth and nodded her head. "Do you like it?" I asked her. "Mm-hmm." She nodded her head slowly. "It tastes sweet, but it also tastes like people leaving." "You mean sad?" I asked. "Does it taste like sorrow to you?" "That's right," she said. "It tastes sorrowful, but sweet. Now, what's surprise number 2? "A book," I said. "A book?" "Uh-huh," I said. "I'm going to read it out loud to you. It's called Gone with the Wind. Miss Franny says it's a great book. It's about the Civil War. Do you know about the Civil War?" "I have heard it mentioned a time or two," said Gloria, nodding her head and sucking on her Litmus lozenge. "It's going to take us a long time to read this book," I told her. "There are 1,037 pages. "Woo-wee," said Gloria. She leaned back in her chair and crossed her hands on her stomach. "We best get started then." And so I read the first chapter of Gone with the Wind out loud to Gloria Dump. I read it loud enough to keep her ghosts away, and Gloria listened to it good. And when I was done, she said it was the best surprise she had ever had and that she couldn't wait to hear chapter 2. That night, I gave the preacher his Litmus lozenge right before he kissed me goodnight. "What's this?" he said. "It's some candy that Miss Franny's great-grandfather invented. It's called a Litmus lozenge." The preacher unwrapped it and put it in his mouth, and after a minute, he started rubbing his nose and nodding his head. "Do you like it?" I asked him. "It has a peculiar flavor." "Root beer?" I said. "Something else?" "Strawberry?" "That too, but there's still something else. It's odd." I could see the preacher getting further and further away. He was hunching up his shoulders and lowering his chin, getting ready to pull his head into his shell. "It almost tastes a little melancholy," he said. "Melancholy? What's that?" "Sad," said the preacher. He rubbed his nose some more. "It makes me think of your mother." Winn-Dixie sniffed at the candy wrapper in the preacher's hand. "It tastes sad," he said, and sighed. "That must be a bad batch." "No," I told him. I sat up in bed. "That's the way it's supposed to taste. Litmus came back from the war and his whole family was dead. His daddy died fighting, and his mama and sisters died from a disease, and the Yankees burned down his house. And Litmus was sad, very sad, and what he wanted more than anything in the world was something sweet. And so he built a candy factory and made the Litmus lozenges, and he put all the sad he was feeling into the candy." "My goodness," said the preacher. Winn-Dixie sniffed the candy wrapper out of the preacher's hand and started chewing on that. "Give me that," I said to Winn-Dixie, but he wouldn't give it up. I had to reach inside his mouth and pull it out. "You can't eat candy wrappers," I told him. The preacher cleared his throat. I thought he was going to say something important, maybe tell me another thing he remembered about my mama, but what he said was, "Opal, I had a talk with Mrs. Dewberry the other day. She said that Stevie says you called him a bald-headed baby. It's true, I said. I did. But he calls Gloria Dump a witch all the time, and he calls Otis retarded. Once he even said that his mama and I shouldn't spend all my time with old ladies. That's what he said. I think you should apologize, said the preacher. Me? I said. Yes, he said, you. You tell Stevie you're sorry if you said anything that hurt his feelings. I'm sure he just wants to be your friend. I don't think so, I told him. I don't think he wants to be my friend. Some people have a strange way about making friends, he said. You apologize. Yes, sir. And then I remembered Carson. Daddy, I said, do you know anything about Amanda Wilkinson? What kind of thing? Do you know something about her and somebody named Carson? Carson was her brother. He drowned last year. He's dead? Yes, said the preacher. His family is still suffering a great deal. How old was he? 5, said the preacher. He was only 5 years old. Daddy, I said, how could you not tell me something like that? Other people's tragedies should not be the subject of idle conversation. There was no reason for me to tell you. It's just that I needed to know, I said, because it helps explain Amanda. No wonder she's so pinch-faced. What's that? Said the preacher. Nothing, I said. Good night, India Opal, the preacher said. He leaned over and kissed me, and I smelled the root beer and the strawberry and the sadness all mixed together on his breath. He patted Winn-Dixie on the head and got up and turned off the light and closed the door. I didn't go to sleep right away. I lay there and thought how life was like a litmus lozenge, how the sweet and the sad were all mixed up together, and how hard it was to separate them out. It was confusing. Daddy, I shouted. After a minute, he opened the door and raised his eyebrows at me. What was that word you said? The word that meant sad? Melancholy, he said. Melancholy, I repeated. I liked the way it sounded, like there was music hidden somewhere inside it. Good night now, the preacher said. Good night, I told him back. I got up out of bed and unwrapped a litmus lozenge and sucked on it hard and thought about my mama leaving me. That was a melancholy feeling. And then I thought about Amanda and Carson, and that made me feel melancholy too. Poor Amanda and poor Carson. He was the same age as Sweetie Pie, but he would never get to have his 6th birthday party. Chapter 19. In the morning, me and Winn-Dixie went down to sweep the pet store, and I took a litmus lozenge for Otis. Is it Halloween? Otis asked when I handed him the candy. No, I said, why? Well, you're giving me candy. It's just a gift, I told him, for today. Oh, said Otis. He unwrapped the litmus lozenge and put it in his mouth. And after a minute, tears started rolling down his face. Thank you, he said. Do you like it? I asked him. He nodded his head. It tastes good, but it also tastes a little bit like being in jail. Gertrude squawked. She picked up the litmus lozenge wrapper in her beak and then dropped it and looked around. Gertrude, she screamed again. You can't have any, I told her. It's not for birds. Then real quick, before I lost my nerve, I said, Otis, what were you in jail for? Are you a murderer? No, ma'am, he said. Are you a burglar? No, ma'am, Otis said again. He sucked on his candy and stared down at his pointy-toed boots. You don't have to tell me, I said. I was just wondering. I ain't a dangerous man, Otis said, if that's what you're thinking. I'm lonely, but I ain't dangerous. Okay, I said, and I went into the back room to get my broom. When I came out, Otis was standing where I left him, still staring down at his feet. It was on account of the music, he said. What was? I asked. Why I went to jail. It was on account of the music. What happened? I wouldn't stop playing my guitar. Used to be I played it on the street, and sometimes people would give me money. I didn't do it for the money. I did it because music is better if someone is listening to it. Anyway, the police came, and they told me to stop it. They said how I was breaking the law, and the whole time they were talking to me, I went right on playing my music, and that made them mad. They tried to put handcuffs on me. I didn't like that. I wouldn't have been able to play my guitar with them things on. And then what happened? I asked him. I hit them, he answered. You hit the police? Mm-hmm. One of them. I knocked him out. And then I went to jail. And they locked me up and wouldn't let me have my guitar. When they finally let me out, they made me promise I would never play my guitar on the street again. He looked at me real quick and then back down at his boots. And I don't. I only play it in here for the animals. Gertrude, the human Gertrude, she owns this shop, and she gave me this job when she read about me in the paper, and she said it's all right for me to play music for the animals. You play your music for me and Winn-Dixie and Sweetie Pie, I said. Yeah, he agreed, but you ain't on the street. Thank you for telling me about this, Otis, I said. It's all right, he said. I don't mind. Sweetie Pie came in, and I gave her a litmus lozenge, and she spit it right out. She said that it tasted bad. She said that it tasted like not having a dog. I swept the floor real slow that day. I wanted to keep Otis company, but I didn't want him to be lonely. Sometimes it seemed like everybody in the world was lonely. I thought about my mama. Thinking about her was the same as the hole you keep feeling with your tooth after you lose a tooth, on your tongue after you lose a tooth. Time after time, my mind kept going to that empty spot, the spot where I felt like she should be. In chapter 20. When I told Gloria Dump about Otis and how he got arrested, she laughed so hard she had to grab hold of her false teeth so they wouldn't fall out of her mouth. Woo-wee, she said, when she was finally done laughing. That sure is some dangerous criminal. He's a lonely man, I told her. He just wants to play his music for somebody. Gloria wiped her eyes with the hem of her dress. I know it, sugar, she said, but sometimes things are so sad that they get to be funny. You know what else, I said, still thinking about sad things. That girl I told you about, that pinch-faced one, Amanda, well, her brother drowned last year. He was only 5 years old, the same age as Sweetie Pie Thomas. Gloria stopped smiling. She nodded her head. I remember hearing about that, she said. I remember hearing about a little drowned boy. That's why Amanda is so pinch-faced, I said. She misses her brother. Most likely, Gloria agreed. Do you think everybody misses somebody, like I miss my mama? Mm-hmm, said Gloria, and she closed her eyes. I believe sometimes that the whole world has an aching heart. I couldn't stand to think about sad things that couldn't be helped anymore, so I said, do you want to hear some more Gone with the Wind? Yes, indeed, Gloria said. I've been looking forward to it all day. Let's see what Miss Scarlet is up to now. I opened up Gone with the Wind and started to read, but the whole time I was thinking about Otis, worrying about him not being allowed to play his guitar for people. In the book, Scarlet was looking forward to going to a big barbecue where there was going to be music and food. That's how I got the idea. That's what we need to do, I said. I slammed the book shut. Winn-Dixie's head shot up from underneath Gloria's chair, and he looked around all nervous like. Huh? Said Gloria Dump. Have a party, I told her. We need to have a party and invite Miss Franny Block and the preacher and Otis can play his guitar for everybody. Sweetie Pie can come too. She listens to his music good. With who? Gloria asked. We, me, and you. We can make some food and have the party right here in your yard. Said Gloria Dump. We could make peanut butter sandwiches and you can cut them up in triangles to make them look fancy. Lord, said Gloria Dump, I don't know if the whole world likes peanut butter as much as you and me and this dog. Okay, then, I said, we could make egg salad sandwiches. Adults like those. You know how to make egg salad? No, ma'am, I said. I don't have a mama around to teach me things like that, but I bet you know. I bet you could teach me. Please. Maybe, said Gloria Dump. She put her hand on Winn-Dixie's head. She smiled at me. I knew she was telling me yes. Thank you, I said. I went over and hugged her. I squeezed her hard. Winn-Dixie wagged his tail and tried to get in between the two of us. He couldn't stand being left out of anything. It's going to be the best party ever, I told Gloria. You got to make me one promise, though, Gloria said. All right, I told her. You got to invite them Dewberry boys. Dunlap and Stevie? Ain't gonna be no party unless you invite them. I have to? Yes, said Gloria Dump. You promised me. I promised, I said. I didn't like the idea, but I promised. I started inviting people right away. I asked the preacher first. Daddy, I said. Opal, the preacher said back. Daddy, me and Winn-Dixie and Gloria Dump are having a party. Well, said the preacher, that's nice. You have a good time. Daddy, I said, I'm telling you because you're invited. Oh, said the preacher. He rubbed his nose. I see. Can you come? I asked him. He sighed. I don't see why not, he said. Miss Franny Block took to the idea right away. A party, she said, and clapped her hands together. Yes, ma'am, I told her. It will be kind of like the barbecue at 12 Oaks in Gone with the Wind. Only it's not going to be as many people, and we're going to serve egg salad sandwiches instead of barbecue. That sounds lovely, Miss Franny said. And then she pointed at the back of the library and whispered, maybe you should ask Amanda too. She probably won't want to come, I said. She doesn't like me very much. Ask her and see what she says, Miss Franny whispered. So I walked to the back of the library and I asked Amanda Wilkinson in my best manners voice to please come to my party. She looked around all nervous and stuff. Party, she said. Yes, I said, I'm sure you would like it if you could come. She stared at me with her mouth open. Okay, she said after a moment. Yes, thank you. I would love to. And just like I promised Gloria, I asked the Dewberry boys. I ain't going to no party at a witch's house, Stevie said. Dunlap knocked Stevie with his elbow. We'll come, he said. We will not, said Stevie. That witch might cook us up in her big old witch's pot. I don't care if you come or not, I told them. I'm just asking because I promised I would. We'll be there, said Dunlap. He nodded at me and smiled. Sweetie Pie was very excited when I invited her. What's the theme? She asked. Well, there isn't one, I said. You got to think of a theme, she told me. She stuck a knuckle in her mouth and pulled it back out. It ain't a party without a theme. Is this dog coming? She asked. She wrapped her arms around Winn-Dixie and squeezed him so hard that his eyes almost popped out of his head. Yes, I told her. Good, she said. You could make that the theme. It could be a dog party. I'll think about it, I told her. The last person I asked was Otis. I told him all about the party and that he was invited, and he said, no, thank you. Why not? I asked. I don't like parties, said Otis. Please, I begged. It won't be a party unless you come. I'll give you a whole free week of sweeping and arranging and dusting. If you come to the party, that's what I'll do. A whole week for free? Otis said, looking up at me. Yes, sir, I told him. But I don't have to talk to people, right? No, sir, I said. You don't, but bring your guitar. Maybe you could play us some music? Maybe, said Otis. He looked down at his boots again real quick, trying to hide his smile. Thank you, I told him. Thank you for deciding to come.